seconds. There's lots of seats down here. So if you want a seat, come on down. Okay, so we're going to go ahead here. We have an hour and a half, and clearly we need to get you guys out so the next group can come in. Thank you for coming. Good morning. We have 2 microphones that you can come to ask questions. Now, Sean will not be answering any difficult questions today, but I'm just kidding.
That's not true.
I'm just kidding. Two cleanup items. One is related to partial loaders for those that are here. So some of you may not have heard this before, but there are individuals who are having trouble with their claims for their various medications and so on and so forth. So that is being worked on, and actually individuals have been spoken to by Tim McPherson, who's in charge of benefits at Opseu. Secondly, on the pension issue, I emailed Derek Dobson, who's the CEO of our pension plan, last night, just to confirm that. In fact, what they will be doing is once the work stoppage or the strike is over, they will be sending out to individuals, all of us, various costing as to what it would take to buy back time. Now, the other thing that's rather important is that they will also outline how you can pay for that. And if you have existing RSPs, that would be one option, okay? But they'll do that on an individual basis with you. It will not be going through the union, okay? But it will be addressed. And you'll have to evaluate that for yourself. For the people who've just started, I wouldn't necessarily say that you'll end up deciding to buy back the weeks that we're off. For those that are looking at retirement or need service time, many people only have 10, 15, 18 years in the plan. I think you still need to look at the value of the service purchase, not just the simple cost, okay? So we're going to start. Sean, we might as well just throw you right out in the front. And there we go.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sean Pentecost. I'm the steward from the Pembroke campus. I'm also your local treasurer, and I have the pleasure of being on this bargaining team. So the fact that I'm standing here before you is proof that management is not at the table. Okay? So I'm going to go over a little bit of information with you. I'm going to go over a little bit of history, and then I am going to open the floor for questions. Again, a lot of the language that is contained in the offer is quite technical, so quite often when you look at it, you might go, well, that doesn't seem to be bad on its face, but there are things that contradict each other, so where there may be a gain in one area, it's taken away in another. So I want to be very, very clear with you folks, okay? So basically, this will be the agenda. What happened in bargaining? What are we facing now? Why the management offer is absolutely unacceptable. What's our offer? Because we did table another offer to the employer immediately after their press conference on Monday, when it did not go well with the press. They within a half hour, they sent a text to our negotiator and said, if you have any other proposals, we're willing to look at them. We sent them one Monday night, we haven't heard back. When they publicized through the media and through the college presidents that they were at the table, we were still at the hotel, so we went down to check the room because we hadn't been informed that, and there were other people in it. We actually have pictures that we sent to the mediator and said, this is kind of misrepresenting, they're not here. And then their response was, we're not willing to meet them face to face, but we will communicate through the mediator, and they still have yet to do so. Then we're going to look at why we should vote no next week. So the chronology. So we were given a call on Wednesday that the employer wanted us to come back to the table, and our mediator said he would not call us back to the table unless there was significant change on either side. So when he asked the employer if there had been significant change, the employer said, we're not going to discuss that now, but we believe union will be pleased when they come back to the table. So we all headed down to Toronto to meet with the conciliator. Conciliator and mediator, it's the same person, okay? So the terms are used interchangeably. And we entered into a media blackout. The first thing they said was, "We're surprised you're still having a rally." And then they proceeded to table the exact same offer they had on the table before, with the exception of they removed the temporary full-time faculty. Everything else was the same, all the same concessions, and we basically said, this isn't significant movement, and the mediator agreed. The mediator actually said, had I known that's what it was, I would not have called the parties back. So we believe it was to reduce the publicity of the rally, because if you actually look at the publicity of the rally, it did not get as strong publicity as the fact that we're back at the table, which is fine, because it really was more about our members. But still, so we said, well, we're here, let's get down to work, see if we can work something out. So we worked through the weekend, and begrudgingly, we were able to get them to move on some things, and most of them had to do with Articles 26 and 27, which are the articles that pertain to partial load. And I'm going to go into a little more detail for that, because I know for partial load folks, it might seem a little confusing, but I have to say we've actually been able to get some very significant gains for partial loads. They're the most significant gains we've been able to get in bargaining so far. And when I say so far, I mean in the history. And there is still work to do, but I'll get into that shortly. So we ended up, because they were not moving and they were talking about cost, and they were assuring us that they were getting no new funding from the government. So we suggested a government task force to address some of the higher cost issues, and the ones that we knew we were not going to get agreement from them at the table. What's different with this task force than any other task force is it is actually going to be facilitated by the government, it's going to be funded by the government, and the recommendations are going to go back to Cabinet for financial support. Any of the task forces we've had in the past in bargaining have not had this type of structure. The government is committed to make changes. The employer is not. So the government got on board and said you need to get the colleges on board, and they begrudgingly agreed, but they agreed. So that was good. And then through about 1 a.m. on Monday, they were still refusing to remove concessions, but they were saying, you know, we're not really strong on this. We're willing to let this go. We're willing to let that go. And we said, okay. We still need to discuss academic freedom because we're kind of far apart on that. And they had never really given us much feedback on academic freedom. And if you look at all of the presentation, or all of the proposals we've done to management, you will see that we've moved quite significantly in our stand on academic freedom. So this past weekend, what we did was, they wouldn't give us an answer, so we actually took their language, and we took about 80% of their language, and we took language from ours that would guarantee some of the things that we wanted. Like, for instance, that, you know, we could choose the way we test. We could choose to the assignments we do. And again, some of you may have managers who allow you to do that. That doesn't mean you have academic freedom. That means your manager is giving you that privilege. And I'm here to tell you you're one manager away from that changing. And some of you have already felt that, okay? I currently have a manager who lets me do what I think is appropriate in my class. I don't have colleagues that have the same experience with the same manager. So, so essentially we were like, okay, we're making good progress. Some of these concessions are coming off, and we told them, like, if you can take away your concessions, we're going to have a deal. We're going to have a deal, and we'll likely have the students back in the classroom. Because the number one thing people told us, aside from our demands, was they did not want concessions. Okay? We had concessions in 2014, and that was not helpful for anybody. So we said, okay, great. So we went off to bed, and then we were like, already in the morning on Monday, like, okay, let's kind of get a deal going here. And they even said to us, well, you know, it's this one part of your academic freedom language we don't like. We're like, fine, we took it out. We took it out because it just supported the one above. So we're like, fine, we took it out. So we're like, we're going to get a deal. And then they literally walked in, and we haven't been meeting as a full team for a long time. They will often meet just with the mediator and the chairs and the vice chairs and the negotiators. So they've been meeting the three, and our team, our 3 representatives walked into the room and they said, we are calling a forced offer vote. Here is our offer. And so any of the concessions that they said they would remove, they did not. And any of the gains we made are actually counterbalanced by the concessions. So that's the issue. So also, you will hear from about a lot of the press, because we were saying on Monday, that was really the only thing the really only big issue we had. I need to make it very, very clear. We didn't refuse the offer because academic freedom was the only issue. We were saying that was the only issue left for us to discuss thoroughly, plus the removal. And we had what we thought was a commitment from them to remove the concessions. So when this dropped, so then in the press it made it seem like, well, we're only going out for academic freedom. No, that is not true. Okay? There are major concessions, especially in Article 2, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the CEC began their campaign of threats and misinformation. And I will tell you, for instance, I'm not sure if you're all aware, but unfortunately, after the rally I can't even remember the date, because honestly the dates run together now. Someone had to inform me today was Friday. Last week, in any case, a faculty member from Conestoga on her way home was killed in a car accident. So on Tuesday of this week, there was a tribute to her in the Hamilton Spectator. In the same section of the newspaper, there was an ad by Mohawk College that was demeaning to Ontario College faculty. So we thought that that was not appropriate. Did they know? Did they not know? I don't know. But it was not good. And there have been, specifically in the GTA, quite a few attack ads going on. So we're trying to counteract those things. And some people have said, what are we telling the students? We're telling the students as much information as we can at this point, but right now what's important is our members have the information. So they vote appropriately. So is academics still is the only issue? No. Is it still an issue? Yes, but it's not the only issue. Can we just return to work now? No, because we don't have any terms or working conditions. We don't have. If you walked into work today, they could tell you, I'm paying you $5 a day. They could fire you in 5 minutes. So as a union, we cannot say, yes, please go back to work. The other thing, too, is it really fits in their favor, doesn't it? We're on strike, we go back to work, and then we vote in a week, and we're standing there in front of all of our students, who we all care about, okay? Who we all care about. They're the #1 reason why we're here. We're looking not just at this semester, we're looking at students going forward as well. So that's the reason. Those are the reasons why we're not in the classroom right now, or in our libraries, or in our counseling offices. So why did they do a forced offer vote now? Because we've now kind of seen their full vision. They didn't think they could get, because they could have done a forced offer vote since September 15th. They didn't think, and this offer is essentially the same as what they had then. The reason why they didn't was because they knew they weren't going to get a yes vote. So college presidents have been visiting picket lines and talking about, oh, we want to talk about when you come back, and so on and so forth, right? That was a recognizance mission, okay? For instance, we're at Pembroke. First week, Cheryl came up. Second week, Claude came up. Last week, both Cheryl and Claude came up in a week. We're not a big group of people. And this has been happening across the system, and some colleges are walking out like Cheryl is, saying, I'm really concerned about you. I want to make sure everyone's okay when they come back. And then there are other college presidents who are walking out going, you're horrible people. It's the divide and conquer. Because all they need is 50 plus 1. And that's what they're aiming for. So, and so what they decided to do is, because we're 4 weeks, it's getting colder, right? They're not providing a lot of information on the semester completion plans, right? We're the ones that are responsible to students. So they think this is a good time to get people to cave. This is a good time for people to say, the students matter more than the concessions that are in the agreement. And I'll be honest with you, if we agree to the concessions in the agreement, it's going to be detrimental to students, not this current semester, but going forward. And why the electronic vote with an email pin over Tuesday through Thursday? Well, the colleges actually wanted in-person voting and online voting, and they wanted to do it on college premises. But that strike breaking in the OLRB said absolutely not. We said we wanted face-to-face voting, but off campus. There are 100 campuses in the province. So I think the OLRB looked at it and said, we cannot organize a vote that quickly that is supervised properly, so we're going to do it all electronically. And because it's the employer's vote, they are using the employer's system to get in touch with you. Okay? So on Monday, you will be sent an email to your college email with a confidential PIN. And you can use that PIN, and there'll be a link for you to, or an address for you to go to. It is a secure site. You will enter your PIN and you can vote. You can also vote by telephone. Okay? And the reason why it's going over 3 days is because the OLRB thinks there might be some problems. So it's really important that you log in on Monday, and if you do not see that email, that you follow the instructions, and the local will give you all of that information, okay? The other thing too is it's really important that you talk to your colleagues, okay? We need to talk to people who are not on the picket lines. We need to talk to people who are not on the picket lines for whatever reason, right? Some of them may be against the strike, some of them may be working elsewhere, some people just maybe chose to stay home. We don't know, but they need the information. So, why does this hurt? So, firstly, it allows the council to avoid applying Bill 148 on equal pay for equal work in provisions to partial load, mostly through Article 205. And actually, Article 205 is something new that they're proposing. This is a huge problem for anybody who's a contract faculty member. So we don't represent part-time and sessional. We're not allowed by law. Right? If they get bargaining rights, they'll have a separate contract. Right? But right now they don't have a contract at all. But under Article 205, by putting the descriptions around what the work we do and what the difference is between the different categories in Article 2, because Article 2 is what speaks to our unit, our work. What it will do is it's setting them up to say that anybody who is not a full-time faculty does not do a significantly similar job. If you look at the language in Bill 148, it speaks to a significantly similar job for equal pay for equal work. By delineating that in Article 2, that is their argument to say that anybody who is a contract faculty does not. And the issue with that is there's many people, I'm sure here too, but at my campus it's rampant, of part-time and partial load people, and it's all across the system, who are on what we call pyramided contracts. They have a contract for teaching, which is partial load, part-time, or sessional. Then they have a contract for curriculum development. Then they have a different contract for coordination, I see nods, or academic advising. So if you actually take all that together, it's exactly what we do. And I think you can all agree that, especially in the last few years, the expectations on contract faculty by the college have increased. Right? They are doing significantly similar, essentially the same job as we are. If we allow this to go through, they will argue that, and these folks will not, they will become an exception to Article 148, and they will not get equal pay for equal work. The other thing too is by adding we have Article 2.03 right now in our current collective agreement that has to do with sessionals, and it basically says the college cannot abuse the sessional category. They want to replace that article, with an article that says we can't grieve for any positions we didn't gain during the moratorium. So we believe they should have put that in the last collective agreement, but they didn't. And if you look at our proposal says keep 203C as it is, so we still have the rollover provision, and create another article for that. Because you wanted the moratorium, okay, fine, we won't grieve for the positions that happened in the past, we want to be able to go forward. That was a no. Okay? So they're really trying to restrict, because even though the government has committed that they will have the funding for Bill 148, they're trying to restrict it. So by their language in Article 205, it completely negates any other the gains we made for partial loads. And we made some significant ones.
Sean, can you walk us through that one more time, please? The connection between 203 and 205. I'm listening, but...
Sure, here. I've actually got... Don't mind me, I'm going to go through the... So this is a comparison document of the two offers. So they wanted to, like I said, they want to replace our current Article 203 with an article that says we can't grieve positions that could have been gained during the last collective agreement because there was a moratorium. Okay? So then they want to remove the existing language, like I said, about converting sessional positions into full-time, and it removes our ability to grieve those. Okay? And for us to be able to protect full-time positions, that article has to be intact. They also wanted to add Articles 203 and 205. So the addition of these articles is a clear concession to Bill 148, as I said. By adding it, management is attempting to say that the work performed, which I've stated. This also means that equal pay for equal work provisions would not apply to them. So you remember when we originally we were asking for SWIFTs for partial load people? Yeah, that went over like a lead brick. But what we were able to do with consultation with a labor lawyer said that because of the changes in Bill 148, we can argue that because the work is substantially similar, unless this language goes in there, that people should get a SWIFT under Bill 148. So we haven't abandoned that, we're going at it in a different avenue. So the other thing too is by doing this, it's going to enshrine the inequity in the collective agreement, and it will circumvent the attempt to make everyone be treated fairly. And I have to tell you, at no time in the history of the college system has full-time and contract faculty been so together. Like, I have to tell you, as a bargaining team, we are awed by what we've been seeing. And I think a big part of that is because of the expansion of contract faculty, and people are seeing it a lot more. So we basically said in ours, keep Article 2 the same as it was before. The moratorium is expired, it's gone, okay? So that's not an issue. Keep everything else the same, but we'll allow you to add the thing about we won't grieve positions, kind of as a give to get a settlement. And they said, well, we appreciate that, but no. So, did that answer, Cecilia? Did that
yeah, thank
answer
you.
Okay. So, yeah.
Where can we find the actual full offer? We want to read the actual reading. I've got the comparison up here. I've got the brief and some OLRB, but I can't find the full text. Is it available?
The comparison document should, at the bottom, have both offers.
Okay, I have got all of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It should have both offers. We included both offers. It would also allow them to, that's another thing too, is they want to narrow the scope of our professional development. Now, one of the things we've been hearing a lot here at Algonquin is people have been having a real hard time getting their PD. It's getting harder and harder. And now what they want to put in is they want to add language that says, your manager must not you must not come to just mutual agreement about what it is, but they have the right to deny you based on scope. What's the other word? I'll have to look it up. In any case, they want to reduce our PD. The other thing too is sorry, I forgot to do 3. Sorry, that's right. Thank you. Really important. This is another way that they want to cut contract faculty. They want to weaken our workload protections for full-time faculty by offering unlimited overtime and unlimited teaching weeks. So, and they really want unlimited overtime. So if we look at, can everyone raise your hand please if you're full-time? Okay, hands down. If you're partial load. If everyone in this room took on, who's full-time, 1 extra hour, you'd all be out of a job. This is an attempt to reduce partial load faculty. Go ahead.
One thing I've seen happen is that, that's one case. The other is where they start hiring other people and splitting the work.
Right, so what they're going to be doing is it's to eliminate the partial load category, because what they'll do is if, let's say you take on, if you're full-time, you take on 3 extra hours, right? And Ian, who's sitting just over from you, takes on 3 extra hours. Well then, and the gentleman between you was a partial load, and he had 9 hours. Well now he's a part-timer with 3.
That sucks. Is individual greed. And it will decimate people's working conditions. The other thing too is let's talk about stress, right? Let's talk about burnout. A lot of people want a few extra bucks, but there are other costs to it too. We think this is absolutely terrible. We've told them several times, but they keep wanting to put it in there. And I think again they're putting it in there because they hope people will go, I can make a few extra bucks, so I'm going to vote for this. So the other thing too is they want to reduce the credit that faculty get when calculating starting salary. So starting salary is something that's near and dear to my heart because they underpaid me for 15 years. $130,000, yay me. Anyway. Our initial salary grid talks about experience, talks about education, and then there's discretionary steps for the manager. Currently, there's a calculation done for the first 2, and then the manager has up to 3 discretionary steps. So the second section, there has been some jurisprudence that says the maximum we can get is 6 years. But there's other jurisprudence that says there's no maximum. So we want to leave it as is. They want to cap it at 6, and they want unlimited discretionary steps. So they said because that will give them the freedom that when they hire PhDs, that they can offer them more money. And so we actually said, well, no, actually, let's adjust the education grid then if you want to do that. But what it does is it creates inequity from the start. Because what happens is if someone turns around and says, no, I won't do it unless I start at step 18, and someone else says, I'll do it, I'll start at step 12. Right? You've got that issue. And also, we also want to be in a situation where people are treated fairly. I mean, people are going to resent someone who just starts and are 1 or 2 steps from the top. Unless they've had a calculation that shows their education experience has them deservedly there, right? But we don't want it to be at a manager's whim. And we're not saying all managers will do it at their whim. But some will. And that's a problem. Again, we actually offered a compromise. We said, why don't we give you 4 discretionary steps? If you think you need that for... No, we want unlimited. So they also wanted to include a letter of an academic freedom letter of understanding, and it's completely toothless, and actually it's arguably worse than the policies we have in our current college, in our colleges, because actually what they did was they actually copied and pasted paragraphs from different ones around the system and made a document. We were actually able to look at it. And it starts with the language that's in Article 4 about anti-harassment. So if you start something that has to do with anybody's
freedom and talk about it being anti-harassment, you're already setting it up as something negative. We were very clear with them. We are not interested in trying to run the colleges. Management still has their rights under Article 6 to hire, fire, discipline, all of that. What we are saying is we want to be able to do what we do best and trust us that in the classroom we are making the right choices. So our article, what we call Article 13, takes we listened to management, we took their concerns, we took some of their language, but we also ensured there was protections in there. The other thing is we tried to change the class definition of a professor. If you look at the class definitions of everyone except for professor, it starts with a counselor will, or a counselor or an instructor does, a librarian does. Professor, it says, under the direction of the senior academic administrator or designate, and then says, we do whatever. So what we said was, can we change that to in consultation with? No. Now, we work at a college where they talk about wanting to be more collegial. We see this as a way of doing that. We see this as a way of us working together. They don't. And I have to tell you, if you've watched the press and seen Sonia Delmissier, the chair of their bargaining team, every time she's in the press, she says, they just have to agree to our offer. We want to bargain, agree to our offer. Agree to our offer. If you look at every time she's in the press since July, that's not bargaining, that's not dictating. I'm sorry, that is dictating. I have not slept a lot in the last couple of weeks. And the other thing too is a return to work nightmare. So what they did was they took the language from 2006, and those of you who were on strike in 2006, wasn't that return to work language great? Because they actually modified it a bit to actually make it worse. Did I not talk about partial load? No. Okay, sorry, just a second. What slide am I on?
Friday today, Sean.
I know, thank you. Okay, so this is the last slide. Here we go. This is the one?
No.
7, 6. This one? Okay. Just so you know, I'm not on the team by myself. Okay. Oh, partial load coordinates to be paid less. Yes, this is another one. So partial loads currently right now are on a separate contract when they coordinate. So they put in the language, they said that they will, for coordinators, nothing changes for full-time coordinators, even though we tried to get changes. But for partial load, they said they'll guarantee that they're getting paid at their current pay rate. Well, the issue is there's no pay rate in our collective agreement for partial load coordinators. So, because originally partial loads weren't supposed to be coordinators, but the college started using more and more partial load coordinators, and so they gave them whatever rate. So again, if you are a partial load coordinator, let's say one of you is doing it for $25 an hour, and another of you is doing it for $40 an hour. Well, if you're getting it at your current rate, the one at $25 is not going to get moved to $40 an hour because it guarantees your current rate. So again, it's also inequity. It's inequity compared to the full-time people too, because a lot of partial load people are very frustrated because they're teaching 12 hours a week, right? Which is, the average for a full-time person across the system is 13.2. So, okay, so you're almost at the average. Plus, you have a separate contract for these other things, right? So some of you are actually working more than full-time people and not making anywhere near the money that we do. Okay? That's just wrong. And what we're proposing will change that. So, sorry, there's the academic freedom language. Okay, and so yeah, we're back to the return to work fiasco. So the return to work protocol in 2006 resulted in 1,400 grievances. To date, only a handful have been settled. Many of them have been dismissed because an arbitrator decided after the fact that things weren't done the way that he felt they should have been, but this was years later. So what we did, so their return to work document contains essentially the same information, and we've never seen a return to work document as part of a forced offer vote before. Okay, they've done this because, again, they want to circumvent that because they want to get this. So I will tell you now, you vote for this, all of the work you're going to be doing to help your students, you're going to be doing for free. So the 2006 strike formula was essentially, it's 1 over 261, so every day you miss, okay? So we're looking, because we're talking about the time of the vote, so that's going to be 24 days. So the average college full-time faculty salary is $90,000. So you're looking at a loss of income of $82.7586. If we do 1 over 61, if we do 1 over 216, which is what they have in their agreement, you're actually losing an additional $1,700, almost $1,800. For, if you're at the bottom of the full-time pay grid, it's about $1,000, and if you're top of the full-time pay grid, it's almost $2,000. So you'd be losing additional money by agreeing to this, because what they're doing is they're dividing our work by 200, it's 200, they say we earn our salary over 16 days instead of 261. And all of our return protocols prior to that, in any strike, 84, 89, 2006, have been 1 over 61. So if you agree to this, if you're full-time, you are going to lose an extra, anywhere between an extra $1,000 to almost $2,000. If you're partial load, because you're paid on an hourly rate, you'll only gain if they pay you for hours that you're going to work, and if you're partial load, you should only work what you're getting paid. Okay? Actually, any of you should only work what you're getting paid.
So, would it be fair to say that that return to work offer, to me, I mean, we're already losing the salary that the payment would have got when we were on strike.
Yes.
So, how I interpret that is basically a little extra punishment.
Correct.
For management, and so let's call it what it is. It's a punitive offer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it absolutely is. But it's better coming from you than me. Right? No, I agree with you, but the point is, right, I am the person here asking you to vote no, right? So, so our counteroffer that we made on Monday night contains historic gains on job security and salary grade progression for partial load without management concessions. The high dollar items have been moved to the task force, and they will need ministry intervention, and the task force will address precarious work. Oh, and by the way, we're being called not a strike, but a social movement. No, seriously. It's being reported on around the world. Okay? Why do you think the University of Ottawa, OUIT, and so on, why do you think they've all voted strongly for strike mandates for their part-time people? Because you started it. Right? We've all been saying it, but we took action. So you have no idea how this is changing the landscape. And we need to make sure that people still understand that. So the high dollar items, so precarious work will be looked at, collegial governance will be looked at. That was something that the colleges were not happy with, so that's been moved to the task force, and the government is very keen on looking at how the colleges run. Faculty complement, so you know the 50-50 we wanted, we're still fighting for it, but it's going to go through the task force, and actually that's going to make it stronger. And our intellectual property protections. And our offer does offer real academic freedom language, but again, don't be confused with what universities have. They have something different. We're not asking for what they have, we're asking just for what I said before. Now, of course, as we start to offer more degrees and so on and so forth, we might eventually, in further collective agreements, look at other language, but right now we're looking at trying to just be able to do what we do and do what we do well. Go ahead.
Question about pay. The number 216 versus 261. Where
261 comes from the previous return to works. So we have used the exact same formula as they have in every other trade. Yeah, it comes from our collective agreement, but it is based on the return to works that have been done in the past. The colleges have changed it for this one specifically, and they have not told us why. We asked them if it was a typo, and they said no. And even if it was a typo, they couldn't change it because it's in the offer that's on the table. They can't change anything. For them to change that, they would have to cancel the offer, make a new offer, and do a new vote.
Okay, 10 months, 5 days a week, work 7260.
Yes, but what happens is they're doing it that way because in the past, even though our contract is 10 months, we're paid over 12 months, right? And so that's why you have your 261. What they're trying to do is they're trying to say, well, it's 10 months, so that's why, but we're not paid over 10 months, we're paid over 12 months.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
So, sorry, I'm almost done. Can we do questions in a second? I promise, I know I'm kind of talkative. So, there are 3 possible outcomes of this. One, that we reach an agreement at the table. If you vote this offer down, they have to come back to the table. Okay? If we accept management's offer, we accept unprecedented concessions into our collective agreement and fail to achieve any of the movement that we're trying to do. The other thing would be provincial legislation. The government is saying that they won't legislate us back to work. The government has been trying to put a lot of pressure on the council. If they get a no, if this is a no vote, that pressure will increase tremendously. The other thing too is if we are legislated back to work and we end up in binding arbitration, it is still better than management's offer. Okay? It is still better than management's offer. I have to make that very clear. The government has said students will not lose their semester or academic year. They have committed to that publicly. So we all know where we're standing right now. We know that it's teetering right now. We also found out that several college presidents were saying they had anticipated a 6-week strike.
Yes.
Right? Several, and we thought initially at those colleges it was a scare tactic. But then when I was at the press conference, I was back at the press conference with the colleges, and they said no. Within 6 weeks, we have a recovery plan. So they won't tell anybody what that is, but they have a recovery plan. So voting no will move things extremely quickly. We even told them, let's continue bargaining. If we get a deal, we can turn that into a ratification vote instead. Because we honestly felt, if they came back to the table on Monday night, we'd have an agreement by Tuesday, students would be in the classroom by Thursday. And the silence you hear now is the silence we've been hearing at the bargaining table since we tabled that on Monday. So these are the reasons to vote no. Accept the offer means that everything that we've been trying to do for partial load is completely undermined. It also undermines part-time and sessional people. Accepting the offer means that we will lose critical workload protections and continue to see a decrease in full-time faculty. Because again, unlimited overtime will also affect the hiring of full-time faculty. Accepting the offer means accepting academic freedom language that is worse than no language at all. And accepting the offer means return to work nightmare with lots of stress. So you can read the big print yourself. I am encouraging you and asking you to vote no. So I'll take any questions anybody has if you can come to the mic so people can hear you. You can come up to the microphone so people can hear you.